Built in the early 1900s, the original Louisiana Highway 1 was a narrow ribbon of road that stretched from Golden Meadow, Louisiana, down to the Gulf of Mexico. It connected Louisiana's only inhabited barrier island, Grand Isle, to the mainland, and was essentially a way for residents to get back and forth. Decades later, in 1995, Congress passed the Deepwater Royalty Relief Act to encourage the development of untapped energy resources in the Gulf of Mexico. This legislation would transform Southeast Louisiana, revolutionize a fledgling port, and put a tremendous burden on LA1.
When Congress passed that act in 1995, it became evident to us that things were going to change in coastal Louisiana, that there was going to be a huge amount of energy found. There was going to be a tremendous need to access this efficiently. And that more than likely the Lafourche corridor, because of its uniqueness, would be the area chosen for energy companies to service the activity in the Gulf of Mexico.
Port officials and other public and private stakeholders formed the Louisiana Highway 1 Coalition to address the issues that would soon surface, and the decision was timely. The once rural two-lane highway very quickly became a major commercial route supporting the full weight of oil and gas exploration, drilling, and production in the Gulf. The massive amount of material and machinery needed to establish and sustain these operations was being transported daily to Port Fourchon along LA1, and this enormous increase in traffic became complicated by another factor. Portions of this critical roadway, now a vital link to 18% of the nation's energy, were virtually disappearing underwater on a regular basis.
As time has progressed, as sea level has risen, as land subsided, the road became lower and lower. The tidal impact, because of land loss in this region, became more and more severe. And in this 30-year span, it went from taking almost a major hurricane to overtop the highway system to just a strong southeast wind.
We've been here when the water's over that road. We have seen what happens when those trucks back up and can't get down here. You all know it is the only access route to the port, our premier intermodal energy port, as well as Louisiana's offshore oil port, the nation's only offshore oil port.
The coalition developed clearly defined goals, the most critical of which was to build an elevated highway from Port Fourchon to Golden Meadow. Phase 1 of the project was completed in 2009.
We currently have a bridge crossing over Bayou Lafourche and another elevated highway section to get to Port Fourchon, which was our most critical need. Now we're working on the section from Leeville to Golden Meadow to get an elevated highway into the levee system, which at that point would have an elevated highway from Golden Meadow all the way to Port Fourchon, which would give us access pre and post storms much quicker.
Well, the next phase and the important phase is the next section of elevated highway. That brings us to Golden Meadow into the hurricane protection area. But then beyond that, north of the Intercoastal, we need the connectivity of a 4-lane highway all the way to US 90. And that'll be the next leg. It'll be a lot drier and a lot easier probably to build. But the important part is the elevated section, which is very expensive. It's through some very sensitive wetlands. And the commitment of the private sector to continue to push heavily to get that done as a priority is never stopped.
The coalition aggressively pursues every funding mechanism, taking its case to Baton Rouge and Washington. But a large buy-in has come from private entities.
The private sector has been the backbone of the Louisiana Highway 1 Coalition. Without the support of private industry, the LA1 project would not have the success we have experienced to date. Congressional and state delegations, parish and port commissions have partnered with private industry. For a project of this size, with this level of expense, it is dependent upon such unity. In a historic move, the private sector has agreed to provide millions in private construction funds for Phase 2 of the LA1 project. This is unheard of generally, but specifically striking here, it is because the same companies are responsible for paying billions of dollars to the federal government as the second largest funding stream to the U.S. Treasury. However, these same companies realize that this road remains vulnerable with every passing year, and it is prudent we take all possible assets and match it in a grant application to the federal government.
LA1 is the only way to get to and from Port Fourchon, America's energy port. LA1 supports activity related to the Louisiana Offshore Oil Port, or LOOP, the country's only offshore oil port. And LA1 carries traffic associated with the commercial fishing fleets that operate out of Fourchon and Grand Isle. In all, an estimated 1,200 large commercial trucks and 18-wheelers now travel LA1 every day. And commercial use is just part of the story. During hurricane season, this roadway serves as a crucial evacuation route for tens of thousands of people. There's only one way to get inland, and that's LA1. In 2011, a study by the Department of Homeland Security assessed the national consequences of disruptions to LA1. It concluded that a 90-day closure of 7 miles along existing at-grade LA1 could result in a loss of billions of dollars in American gross domestic product. A concurrent 90-day closure of Port Fourchon as a result of the loss of this highway access would significantly reduce domestic oil and gas supplies for 10 years after the closure. In other words, the entire nation depends on Louisiana Highway 1.
Well, this country needs energy, clearly. It is the basis for our economy. You look at, we're the largest energy consumer in the world. So for us to keep on living the way we do and thriving and having an economy, we need energy. And this one little thread of a highway is the sole access to this huge energy supply sitting out in the Gulf of Mexico.
Port Fourchon plays a strategic role with providing 15 to 18% of our country's entire oil supply. We're projected to service out of this port 44% of pending future deepwater plants, 58% of all offshore drilling in the Central Gulf over the next 30 years. More than 200 large supply vessels cross the port's channels each and every day. The bottom line is that LA1 is a critical corridor, not just for the people in coastal Louisiana, not just for the people of Louisiana, but truly for our entire country.
The security of this critical corridor requires funding, and while policymakers may debate priorities, infrastructure of this magnitude can't be ignored. There's just too much at stake.
The future of this project depends entirely on the ability to get it funded. We have committed matching funds. Private sector has committed matching funds. The state of Louisiana has committed matching funds. So we need the federal side to step up to finish the project. It's expensive, but it's a serious priority.
The Homeland Security study completed in 2011, which looked at the cascading economic impacts that our nation would suffer should we lose LA1, determined that there would be an $8 billion impact in lost gross domestic product to the nation. So it's huge. With such a clear warning from the federal government's best modeling economists, policymakers need to take action now.